Got questions about spiritual life, relationships, inner peace, or navigating everyday challenges with grace? Welcome to Ask a Swami, a Q&A series where you ask and Swamis from Yasodhara Ashram share their insights and experiences. In this episode, I speak with Swami Sukhananda about purpose and connection.
Murali Krishna, Mukunda Krishna, Mohana Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hello, Swami Sukhananda, and welcome to Ask a Swami.
Hello, Katie. It's lovely to be here today.
Yeah, it's a joy to have you on our podcast. And we're going to jump right in today with our first question. Someone asks, Dear Swami, do you believe everyone has a purpose? Does it come in the form of a gift to share, simply a way of being, or something else entirely?
That's quite a big question. Definitely, to be involved in our teachings, I think you need to have an idea that there is a purpose to life. We're always asking that question if you come to the ashram, what's your purpose? What's the purpose of life? And it's not like we give you a prescription or an answer. We are genuinely asking you to dig inside yourself and find out where it is and what it means. And if you read our books all have that same question in them, often several times over. And in fact, Swami Radhananda's book, Living the Practice, has a whole section on purpose of life. So there's lots that you can draw on to give you the idea that, yes, it's an important thing as far as we're concerned. And of course, there's a kind of deeper thread to this. People might have heard of the idea of Dharma, which is like the underlying reason or vibration or cosmic law almost. And we don't ask you to know what that is or understand it, but each time we probe inside ourselves, we're moving a little bit closer to being able to align ourselves with what that is and have more of a sense of it. And one of the things that Radhananda says, which is really reassuring, is that we do actually have wisdom within ourselves. Every one of us has wisdom within ourselves that we can access. And so that process of asking yourself, what's the meaning of my life? It's an active yoga practice in itself. And in fact, you don't even need to be a yogi to start down the path of asking that question, because at some point in our lives, we all ask that question. But we don't necessarily have the structure and the ability to reflect and to get deeper, to really get to it. And it's not made simpler by the fact that just reading books about Dharma and purpose won't actually get you there. You do need to know how to reflect and go within, because each of us is unique, and our little piece of purpose that fits into the whole cosmic Dharma is unique to ourselves. So we're probing to find for ourselves what that is. And to give you an idea of that, Swami Radha herself says she was 44 when she first went to Rishikesh. And she said, she didn't have that idea of the purpose of her life before she went to Rishikesh. It really kind of woke her up. She thought there had to be more to life, which was why she was there, why she was seeking. But it took going to Rishikesh for her to start to get a hold of that. Whereas Radhananda talks about being 36 when she was at the ashram, and then starting to ask how could she live her life better. She was married, she'd got kids, she got money problems. So she was in a situation where she couldn't just wave a wand and have a different life and think, oh, my purpose is something else and I'll go and do something else. To her, it was more like, how do I really take responsibility for my life? And how do I bring quality into my life? In my own case, it was more, even early on, in my early career, I wanted a job with meaning. I wanted to make a contribution to life. And I chose environment as a direction because I did want to contribute. And that kind of touches on this whole thing about having a talent that you can share and other people can benefit. But it wasn't till I came to the ashram when I was 37 then, when I did the YDC, which is a 3-month course, and started to have that question given to me, started to reflect, and started to get the idea that actually it wasn't just something that I could arrive at intellectually, which is, I think, how I'd done it before. I mean, there must have been some kind of a heart urge, but really it was my logical mind that was figuring things out before. And then I kind of got onto, this is the way to find out. I don't say that by the end of the YDC I knew the answer, but I do know that I knew I'd got hold of something at that point. And so I could start to work on it. And in fact, I decided to stay at the ashram, and I learnt to teach. And perhaps it was a couple of years later when I was teaching, and I thought, yes, somehow now I've got something that's meaningful. I'm doing something that is really worthwhile, which is not to say that what I was doing before wasn't useful, but I could really feel, people would come to class, and then when they left, they were better. They were always in a better place than when they arrived. And there was no downside to that. It was just a really good thing to be doing, and it felt good. So there's a thing about aligning yourself which comes into purpose. And I'm not sure that I can remember what the rest of the question was at this point, because it was quite a long question. But I think I've made a start on the fact that there is a purpose.
Absolutely. Yes, I would say so. And I really appreciate how you've spoken about, the process of Swami Radha finding her purpose, Swami Radhananda, and yourself, and how that has really been a process of questioning and reflecting. And it reminds me, you also mentioned this briefly, of the practicality of these teachings at Yasodhara Ashram. And it reminds me of questions that I was asked during my YDC, the Yoga Development course. The very first question: what makes my life meaningful? What is the purpose of my life? What makes my life worth living? And these are big questions, and they can be difficult to answer, but I think about how values play such a big part in this, in understanding our purpose and what makes our life meaningful, and also what sort of contributions can we make. And so the second part of the question was, does it come in the form of a gift to share, simply a way of being, or something else entirely?
Well, there is a way of being that you gradually tune into, I would say. The more you're on track, the more you can tune into it. And it is about the gifts that you have in a certain way, because using what you have in the best way that you can is going to be most meaningful to you, which is part of what makes it, a unique path for each individual, and why it doesn't make sense to kind of tell people, this is it, this is the answer, this is what you do. But one of the things, and I wanted to quote this because it's from Radhananda, and she says, once we get to that place of asking these questions, then we can take responsibility and cooperate with evolution. And we can get to that place where we can be intelligent, mature. We can find intelligent solutions to the problems of the world. So if you can imagine us all making our little, it doesn't have to be big, but every one of us working in that direction, what a different world it could be. Because we would be finding more creative solutions, because we'd be working together in a meaningful way. And so that to me is a really, yes, it's selfless, but it's using your own talents and your experience and your gifts in a way that's constructive. And also putting in the effort in the best way you can. So trying to put quality into things. It's not like, I'll just get that done and then I'll move on to something else. It's like, if this is my next task and it is aligned with my purpose, then I want to do it the best way I can, And I'm not talking perfectionism here. I'm talking the best that I can do in the circumstances that I'm in, because that is all part of collaborating with the purpose of your life.
And what a wonderful idea to collaborate with the purpose of your life. And what you mentioned really rings true, the importance of reflection and putting quality and care in all that we do. So now for our next question, someone asks, Dear Swami, how do we stay connected to spirit in crazy times?
Well, yes. It's very easy to be distracted. And there's all sorts of things, like we go to work, we have ideas, we have worries, maybe even money worries. Routine itself can kind of dull the mind. And so any of those things can kind of pull us away from that connection that we want to attain through discovering the purpose of our lives. But each day, during the day, there are lots of things we can do, even during the day, even at work. We can stop and breathe more consciously. It's as simple as that, It's really not that complicated. Just bring our mind to our mantra practice, if you have a mantra practice, or if you have a key word that is meaningful to you. Just pausing and bringing yourself back to those things. And then each day, taking some time to reflect and have a journal. And I couldn't emphasize that enough, really, because you need to sort of sit down and think about, well, what did I actually do? What did I learn? Where was I going? There are all sorts of questions. What came during the day? What were the gifts that I got during the day? All those different ways that can take you into the purpose and back to the purpose. Even if you did go completely off track during the day, or you feel you did, then that's a way that you can bring yourself back. And we've got other tools, hatha and using the body. The body knows. So we can spend time just with our own body, checking in with that, and what does it have to say? What's its view on the day? And are we using certain muscles too much or not correctly? Like, find out. The body has to be aligned as well as the spirit and the heart and the mind. So we can do all those things and use them to just really reconnect with ourselves. And in fact, again, I would say there's lots and lots in the books, as well as using your own reflection. And there's a book by Yogananda, which most people, I think, have heard of, Autobiography of a Yogi. And he says, it's good to read yoga books. That's another method of connecting with ourselves. But his method, I think, is really interesting. He says, read a sentence, integrate it into your life so that you really know it and understand it and you're practicing it. Then move on to the next sentence. So, you don't have to get through lots of books. You could use one book, one chapter of one book even, for quite a long time to really get the real essence of it and see it's not just an abstract idea, it's a real idea of what you can actually do in your life. And nowadays people talk about taking yoga off the mat. And that's what that's all about. It's about stopping and thinking, tuning into yourself before you move on and do the next thing.
I know for myself, the process of staying connected to spirit, or for myself, the term to my center feels more appropriate, can be really difficult when I'm, for example, in a big city and there's a lot of noise around, or I'm watching the news and there's all this suffering in the world. And for me, it's really hard to remember to do those things that you just mentioned, like to take a deep breath a couple times during the workday, or to reflect at night even. So I wonder if you have any kind of tips on how to get there, how to remember. And it makes me think of Swami Radha. I've heard that she used to say, it's not that we're so bad, it's just that we forget. And I really feel that in my life of forgetting those tools. So how can we remember?
Well, I think that's a really good point. We do forget a lot. And even this last week, I had a student who decided that her practice was going to be to do some mantra each day. And she'd done it some days and she hadn't done it other days. And I said, well, when you did it, how did it feel? And it was wonderful, she said. When I did it, it was really helpful. But, then you don't need to get down on yourself. It's like, okay, I've done it today. I'm going to do it tomorrow. It's making ourselves accountable until the habit is there and the habit can grow. I also would recommend coming to the ashram because it's a chance to get away from old habits. It's a chance to be in a supportive environment with other people who are also working on those things themselves. And you've got the support of the atmosphere and the support of the teachings. So, even if you tend to drift off as the year goes by, you can come back and come to the ashram and reconnect in that kind of way. And then you go out with a boost, as it were. Another thing, obviously, is to be involved in a class every week. When I was in Ottawa, I was in class as many evenings of the week as I could make it. I actually made sure that I lived near the yoga centre in order to make that possible for myself, because I knew I needed the support of others and the teacher. So it was useful to me to be going to classes at that stage. It was very useful. And of course now, because there's online, then you've got that extra help that you can get in that way. And it's nice to be in live classes, I think, because of that community connection, which also supports you. But really, time isn't infinite, and so you don't want your life to fly by. And so if you go, well, actually, today I missed the ball, but then tomorrow I'm going to give it another go, because I don't want every day to be the same. It's not a case of giving up. It's a case of saying, pick up, as it were, and keep going. And if coming to Yasodhara Ashram seems like a difficult thing to do, it's not either, because if you have the sincere desire to get to an ashram, then you can start to open yourself to the possibility, and the divine will step in and cooperate and make it helpful and easy for you to make it. When you listen to people's stories of how they get here when they didn't think they could, it's quite amazing. They do get here. And so, even having that aspiration can be helpful. And looking out then, being open and looking out for the things that come your way that give you a step towards it, can all be part of being connected, actually. Even though you're not here, you're connected to the getting here.
There are certainly so many wonderful opportunities through Yasodhara Ashram to stay connected to center or spirit or the divine. The online classes, as you mentioned, and all the other retreats that happened. And I've frequently heard people talk about how oftentimes they'll come to the ashram to fill up, whether that's with light, with peace, compassion. And then once they fill up, they're able to go back into their worlds and contribute to their community, to their surroundings, to their work, to their families. And I think that's so beautiful, like that idea of filling up. And I guess it's really about understanding for each individual, what is it that fills me up? What is it that energizes me so that I can contribute and find center in the midst of crazy times, whatever that might be.
Yeah, the other part of it is not to focus on the craziness too much. Focus on the desire to get to the ashram. Focus on the desire to get to the light. What is the desire there that actually helps you move forward? And just shift your focus from the one thing to the other.
And that reminds me of a recent conversation I had with Swami Sukhananda about hope and how to carry hope in difficult times when there's so much darkness in the world. And something that we talked about, similar to what you're saying, of shifting the focus, is, turn off the news. Once you have received the information, turn it off and do the divine light invocation and try to lift those emotions, because on some level, that's really all we can do on a day-to-day basis, I think.
That's the first step, I would say, is to shift your focus. But there's always something you can do, because if you're living your life in a purposeful way, you're making a contribution in a positive way to life. And if you see distressing news, then you can chant for those people. You can donate to charity. You can make contributions in very different ways. And it's making that choice to make change, just not let the crazy times drag you down, but go, well, what's my purpose? Why is this happening? Why am I hearing it now? What is it that I can do to lift the situation, just to change the vibration in my own home to be a more positive direction?
Well, and I think that's a very positive approach that can help many people, including myself, gain clarity on what it is that makes my life meaningful and how to move forward despite the craziness around me, whatever that may be. Well, thank you so much, Swami Sukhananda, for having this conversation with me about purpose and connection. And it is my hope that whoever's listening can have some further new reflections on their purpose and what makes their lives meaningful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. It was a pleasure to talk about it.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Yasodhara Ashram is located in British Columbia on the unceded traditional territory of the Ktunaxa and Sinixt peoples. If you have questions that need answers, you can submit them to the form link in the description. You can learn more about the ashram and Swami Shivananda Radha's teachings by visiting our website at yasodhara.org.